Hello, welcome to another Thursday Live with me, Dr. Rose Coon. Let me turn this down a little bit. I'm a little bright. That's better. So, as usual, this month, that's Gracie. I might have to give her something to eat. She's a little bit something today. This month, I'm talking about spirituality, and it's a huge subject. Huge. And people talk about it for years. And part of what I've been doing over the last year, I've been doing this now a year, is talking about spirituality, but in different areas of our life. And I started out talking about the dilemmas, the spiritual dilemmas of being on this planet, and that everything that we're doing, in a sense, in our human life is, in essence, part of our spiritual practice, part of our spiritual learning, part of our spiritual curriculum, all those things. But what the heck does that all mean anyway? What is it all about? So today, the title of this is called Wherever You Go, There You Are, Spirituality. Wherever you go, there you are. And but what this is going to be is sort of a mashup, I think, of stuff, of perspectives and orientations, just to say, here's what we're dealing with. That those of us who are saying, hey, I want a spiritual practice, or I'm on a spiritual journey, or I'm on a spiritual path, or I'm a spiritual seeker. It's like, what the heck does that mean? What does that mean? And how do we go forward with that? Now, most of us have never actually distinguished what it means. What does spirituality mean? And we just say, oh, here's a spiritual practice. But quite often that spiritual practice, or the idea of spirituality, is more related to metaphysical stuff, same stuff, or transpersonal stuff, but not necessarily related to spirituality. So over decades, I've been studying and learning and training myself in the unfolding of this spirituality thing. And for me, I can just give you my definition, but what I want for you is to figure out what your definition is. Like, what is spirituality for you? What is that? So I'm just going to give you, and again, this is going to be sort of a mashup of stuff. So if you're looking for the ABCs, or here's what spirituality is and here's what it's not going to come out in bullet points. It's just going to come out in conversation, and hopefully you'll participate in this conversation and in this conversation. Hi, Marge. It's nice to see you here. So for me, I have a couple of definitions, but over time and working with various spiritual teachers, spiritual books, all kinds of things like that, I've come to see that spirituality is actually the cultivation of the realization of the fact that we are all part and aspects of the divine. We are all part of the source of all that is, the universal source of all that is. We are part and parcel of the divinity of God. We are all essence of and the expression of divinity. And that divineness can be a God, a universe, light, love, whatever that is for you. That's what it is for you. And I want you to be able to discern that. But for me, we're all part of that divinity. And what that means then is that I'm not more divine than you. I'm not less divine than somebody else. I'm not less spiritual than someone else. I'm not less or more than anybody else. We're all aspects of the divine, and we're all here. This is, again, my definition. We're all here to learn to be the fullest expression of that divinity, the essence of the divine in life. And we see people who are radiant, right? And sort of they have a light about them. We go, wow, must be a real spiritual person. But they are able to let go of everything that interferes with them being their fullest expression of that divine essence, that natural. And so the practice of spirituality for me, and I'm going to define that a little bit more, but the practice is, where do I get in my own way? Where do I get in my own way of being that fullest expression? So that's one part. Another thing is, where do I get in the way of being in a more inclusive, engaged relationship with divinity, with the divine, with the sacred holy? Where do I ignore or avoid or distract myself from the fact that, the tree behind me is an essence of the divinity, my dog? Everything in material form is an aspect of the divine, as much as energy and vibrations and frequencies. It's all part of the divine. I've been listening to, if you're interested, Paul Selig, who's been around for a very long time and channels a group called Guides, or sometimes they call themselves Melchizedek. But I'm also a student of the Course in Miracles, of Oneness, all kinds of student. I'm a student. So being able to see, how do I really see this thing called spirituality or spiritual whatever? How am I spiritual? Those are all things that we make up because they're just words, but what does it actually mean? I had a conversation with a client. I'm going to call him Matthew, and Matthew's taking a webinar on spirituality and like a retreat, and he says, I'm really wanting to work on my spiritual practices. And I go, well, why? Like, what does that mean to you? Well, it means I'm more spiritual and I will have a better sense of the clarity of what I need to do to. And I go, well, why? Like, what is that all about? And he had a hard time articulating that. And it's partly because we're not really taught what this thing is that we're having a relationship with. We go, oh, there's a God out there, and there's angels, or there's gods and goddesses out there, or there's aspects of entities or energies out there, but we're separate from them. And it's like, here I am in this physical form on Earth, in what we consider a consensus reality, in a sense that we all think this is the paradigm, the 3D or 4D paradigm, and that's what we live in. Where now there's all kinds of evidence, and there's a lot of people who've had experiences, near-death experiences, spiritual transformative experiences, mystics who've been talking for thousands of years of this truth of our divinity, that our holiness, our sacredness, and that each and every single one of us is that. So there's so much evidence and so much more opportunity to reveal that within ourselves, but we have to come to that reality, in a sense. And for me, the spiritual part of that is the conversation about our divinity and our holiness and our sacredness, and not only me, but every single aspect of the universe, every single aspect of what's on Earth, every single aspect of every single person that you know and don't know. And that's a big be with. So most of us have learned, in a sense, and I hear this a lot, that I got two thoughts about that, two thoughts coming at the same time. One is, I was raised as a Catholic, so a lot of our religions, we think, are teaching us the spirituality. And quite often, I mean, when I recognized what spirituality was, in the sense of this relationship, a deeper relationship with myself in relation to my divinity and the divinity of the wholeness of the world, which is a big concept, I realized I didn't get that at church. There was me, and there was God and the saints, and then there was this priest, and I would go to confession. I couldn't talk to God directly, had to talk to the priest. And so he, as that intercessory, it didn't allow me to develop that relationship with this divinity, this divine power of the universe. At that point, it was sort of a God and a man God and an earthly beard guy. But I wasn't taught how to have a relationship with that, nor that divinity lives within me. In Eat, Love, Pray, Elizabeth, I forget her last name, I apologize, but she says, God dwells within me as me. God dwells within me as me. And that's really awesome. And when we begin to cultivate that, then something begins to shift. So this whole month, but specifically today, talking about what is that thing we call spiritual or spirituality. And it's when I think of spirituality, that word, and other words come up that are similar. Sexuality comes up, sensuality come up, those three in particular, but then individuality or duality or non-duality. But that duality part of those words is really important. And I did a lot of searching to say, what does the duality actually mean? The quality is the quality also has that in that too, and many other words, but those in particular because they refer to the elements of ourselves that we're having a relationship with. We have a sex or a sexual foundation, and how I have a relationship with that and how I be the expression of that, in a sense, is cultivating sexuality. It's cultivating that relationship with myself so I can be the expression of that. The same with sensuality. We have a relationship with all of our senses. And so when we cultivate a relationship with that and then be the expression of that sensuality, every single one of us, it comes up and shows up differently. It's all individual. And the same with, individuality, right? We all are learning to know ourselves as who we are, as opposed to what we think other people want us to be or what we think we should be. And we go, wow, my individuality allows me to be the expression of this quality of life, this quality of being, and this quality of presence, whatever that is. So for me, when I look at those three words, it helps me distinguish, here's this thing we call spirituality. I have a spirit. And what that means is I have a divinity, an energy, quality of essence that is part and parcel of the universe. And how do I be in relationship with that? First of all. And second of all, how do I be in relationship with that with you or my children or my dog or my neighbors or the government or COVID? How do I be in relationship with that in relation to the spirit self? And how do I be in relationship to the allness of it all? So it's like it makes perfect sense that these conversations are so big that we say, okay, I'm going to go study meditation. That's my spiritual practice. But what is it that's you're studying or practicing in relation to your spiritual development? In a sense, your essence self-development. So those are some of the questions that I get a lot from people all the time, because I'm doing in my transformational life coaching work, I'm always doing spiritual development, spiritual cultivation, always writing about it. I have a number of books: Aging Like a Guru, Parent Like a Guru, Diet Like a Guru, Cultivating Spirituality in Children, and lots of other things where this dynamic and these dilemmas show up, like, what is it? And how do I do it? We have a lot of spiritual seekers, people who are seeking spiritual enlightenment, perhaps spirituality. Because they want to be enlightened, and it's like, what's the intention of that? What's the intention of being a seeker? I read a book by Nisargadatta. It's called "I Am That," and it was great. But his whole message is, I am that. I am the divine essence of all that is. I am the divine expression. I'm the expression of the divinity of all. That's who he is. And so in the book, there's people who are asking questions and asking questions and asking questions, and they're continuing to seek something. It's like, yeah, you're the divinity, but what about this? And what about that? And there's a thing that they're trying to seek, as opposed to going, wait, stop the seeking. Stop trying to get the answers. Stop trying to get things from this process, and just be here in the exploration of you. Ram Dass, be here now. Be here now. You hear that if you're a spiritual seeker of any, if you've done any, even at the beginner's level, that's foundational, that your spiritual relationship with yourself exists right here, not in the past and not in the future, but right here. So if you have any questions or any comments so far, I'd love to hear them. And if you are listening to this after the fact, please leave comments below in terms of questions, and I'm happy to answer them after the fact. Whenever I get them, I will answer them to you, for you. But what does spirituality mean to you? I'd love to hear. Thank you for the thumbs up. And if you find this of value, please let me know by giving me thumbs up and or subscribing, so it lets YouTube and lets other people know that there's value here for them as well as you. And you can leave comments, and that also lets people know there's an engagement conversation that's really, really valuable, perhaps. So that's that part. We have a belief that if we're spiritual, like we're chasing spirituality, a lot of people are chasing spirituality because they're doing it for a couple of reasons. One is by chasing spirituality, it's a bypass of their humanness. And we think that if we're spiritual, that we won't hurt, we won't suffer, we won't feel loss, we won't feel angry, we won't have human circumstances. It's like a way for us to bypass this humanness, when in fact we came here to have that for, I'm saying when in fact, but that's again my perspective, and it's one that I've cultivated by listening and hearing other people. But the fact of the matter for me is that we came here to have a human experience, to engage with our every single emotion, every single expression of humanness that's possible. We came here. It's like going to Disneyland and going, I wanted to go on every single ride. It's like that. But we get here and we go, nope, don't want to feel that. And I don't want to feel that. And that's a sin. And that's a bad thing. And if you're angry, that means that you're not spiritual and all that stuff. And all that stuff is all spiritual. It's the, what do they say? The grist for the mill. And that's another, I think that was another, well, I know it's another book written, I think by Ram. I can't remember who that wrote that, but Grist for the Mill was another book. Everything is grist for the mill. Everything is an opportunity to look at in relation to who am I, and looking at attachments and my attachments to being right and being seniority, important authority, all these things. It's not spiritual. That's, again, my perspective. But I'll tell you, and later on this month, I'll be talking about the dark night of the soul. But when you, I've done, I've also, there's a podcast and it's on YouTube. So you can check that out. It's a playlist called Spiritual Immersion, Taking the Plunge. It's a podcast you can find on Amazon or Podbean or wherever you listen to your podcasts. But Spiritual Immersion, Taking the Plunge, I wrote by going through this process of in what people call dark night of the soul, where we do a lot of, we being anybody who's gone there and done that, the darkness of the truth, in a sense of what I made up, what most of us make up in our life about right, wrong, good, or bad, and what is spiritual. And if I'm spiritual, then I won't have any problems and I'll be rich and I'll have the right love life. You know, God will take care of me. If I'm a good Catholic or a good Christian or a good Muslim, then I'll be taken care of. And that goodness is related to something other than actually the fullest expression of my humanness. I know people who have been in spiritual institutions, spiritual practices, spiritual groups where they work at eliminating the human element of life. And so people walk away from that pretty much in a dark night of the soul, because it's like, wait, there's no sense of connection here. There's something missing. There's a missing link. And a lot of people kind of have challenges, spiritual challenges, because they've followed a belief, they followed a orientation that says, just come this way and you won't have to suffer. And that's a way, and it's a practice, and it might be fulfilling to a degree, but at some point there's that questioning of going, wait a second, there's something not computing here. And when we get to those places of things aren't computing, we can come to imagine that there's another way that's going to show up. There's going to be something, a crisis of meaning, a crisis of spirit, a crisis of midlife crisis is quite often that point where we go, wait a second, I've been doing all this stuff. I've made lots of money, had relationships, have the house, and it's not fulfilling. It's like, it's not doing it. There's something missing. And that leads us into what I call a spiritual immersion process. In a sense, we begin to explore who we are through our humanness. And out of that, we begin to emerge into a different paradigm, a different orientation, one that we can engage in a sense. We go, this is, for example, waking up in the morning and being in dread and despair and going, how's the money going to come in today? Where's it going to come from? How do I know I'm going to be safe? I don't feel safe. I'm all alone, blah, blah, blah. It's like living in that for most of my life. And I think that's true for a lot of people, and going, okay, that isn't working. That isn't, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm done with doing that. And knowing that so many spiritual teachings are saying you can shift that by training yourself to let go of what you're afraid to lose. You can shift that by training yourself to see what you're attached to. What are you attached to in terms of your thoughts and your beliefs and stuff? Buddha says that it's our attachment that creates the suffering. He talked about suffering. But my experience, we have all kinds of desires that actually are fulfilling and that create fulfillment. But it's our attachment that those desires have to look a certain way or be a certain way. And we do this with families all the time. It's like people with parents. It's like, my parents are supposed to be this way, and the parents say, my daughter's supposed to be this way. And so we have that attachment to how it's supposed to be, and we never get clear enough to go, here's who I am. And I would love to be connected to you and have a sense of belonging with you, but we can't, because these attachments to personalities or attachments to here's who you should be and this is how I'm going to be, and you should love me even though because I'm your mother, and all that stuff is just attachments. And so when we get clear about what those attachments are, we can begin to go, oh God, am I ever attached to that? I have a daughter. I love my daughter. I love my grandson. And I'm attached to being a mom. I'm attached to having this relationship with this person from the orientation of I am the mother and she is the daughter, and this is how you do that. And what that does is doesn't work for us. Maybe it works for somebody else. But that engagement from I'm your mother and you should treat me this way, or I'm the mother and I should be treated that way, but I'm not, the victim-y thing, it's not working. So rather than saying, oh, she's wrong or she's bad or she's not doing it right, I have to go, yeah, no, I have some attachments here. And my attachments are interfering with my capacity to love and accept and allow her just as she is in her divinity, in her fullest expression, and allow that this is what it looks like right now. And again, when we talked about the serenity prayer in the last one in January, that serenity of being in the serenity of accepting what I cannot change. So none of this has anything to do with a conversation with her, my daughter, about us. It has to do with me having a conversation with me about me, as in how I see myself in the physical world. And again, my attachments to my identities and my roles has to do with my resistance to giving up my righteousness and my right to be a mom and be treated like a mom and be, expressed like a mom. And it's like, yeah, no, that's not working. I don't know about you. I don't know if you have any of those places where you go, yeah, I'm supposed to be treated like that. I'm a this and I'm a that, I'm a powerful person, or I'm a this, but it's not working. Righteousness, a long time ago when I was training as a family therapist, marriage and family therapist, they said, yeah, a big statement was you can be right or you can be in relationship. And this is another aspect of our relationship with our spiritual life, our spiritual self, or with God, is that we say, hey, I'm being spiritual, God. I'm being here for you. Now you got to do your side. You got to do what I want you to do. And we do this all the time. It's like, if I'm a good spiritual person, I won't hurt, my aches and pains will go away, and God will give me everything I want. And when that doesn't happen, we get pissed. We get pissed at God. We want to tell him to fuck off. Fuck you. A lot of people, I'm telling you, a lot of people, a lot of clients that I have that kind of relationship with God. It's a big fat fuck you with God, because they have a sense of what that relationship should be. That relationship should be. And in that should be-ness, and God doesn't show up that way, isn't showing up that way, whatever, they get pissed. And then they get angry, and then they get resentful, because they're attached to this is what it's supposed to look like. So this is part of that dilemma when people are cultivating or looking at cultivating a spiritual practice, or being on a spiritual journey, or being on a spiritual path. It's like most of us are exceptionally blinded to what we're actually doing. And most of us are on a path, I'll talk about myself, where there are breadcrumbs. It's like there's a crumb there, and it's like, look at that. Wow. It becomes a revelation, like, wow, that's amazing. And then a little bit later, and I usually forget that there was this amazing thing, a little down the road, it's like, oh my God, look at that. Another something that's a revelation. And over time, we go, wow, there's so many revelations or experiences that indicate that there is a divinity, and that I am that, as Mystic Ardata would say, that you begin to live in that paradigm, that reality, versus the reality of sick and fucked up, pissed off, righteous, unworthy, unlovable, undeserving, and all of those aspects that are so entrained in us. Ruiz says in Four Agreements, we're so domesticated into believing that we're nothing and no one, nobody, that it's so hard to train ourselves back to allowing ourselves to experience the sense of fulfillment, the sense of divinity, the sense of awe that is within, as well as throughout. Boy, I wish you guys would ask some questions because I'm talking a lot. So one of my favorite books, not books, one of my favorite movies I saw 1994, I think it was, or 95, called Wings of Desire. And the book that came, or the movie that came out, the U.S. version was called City of Angels, I think it's called. And it's about guardian angels who are hanging out. The original is part English and part German. The angels are hanging out in Germany, in Berlin specifically, just before the wall came down, or as it was coming down. But one of the angels is like, it's just despairing, just passionate. See that my connection is unstable. If I pause or something, let me know. But I'll just keep talking unless something else shows up. So this angel wants to be a human being. He wants to experience not just, oh, aren't we, the romantic elements of life and the isn't this beautiful? Isn't this lovely? Isn't this wonderful? But he wants to experience the despair and the despondence and the loss and the grief. Like all of it is so, in a sense, there's a sense of rapture about it. And I watched that movie like 4 times because I love the truth in that. And that's what I've heard from other sources to say, we're here to experience all of that. We're here to know ourselves through that. Not just I had the experience of depression, but this is who I was through that. We're able to witness ourselves and watch ourselves in that process and learn who we are and come to honor ourselves through that, and respect ourselves and trust ourselves. Wow, I came through some really sucky stuff. That's pretty cool. I'm much more courageous than I imagined. Hang on, Margie. I just want to, okay, it's just a little bit bright there. Let's see if I can turn that down a little bit. Marge says, I've spent most of my life trying to be nice, stuffing all my not nice emotions and avoiding upsetting others by tolerating or not saying no when I really should have, till I lost my sense of self. Yeah, that's what most of us do. We develop a personality or a persona of what this is how I should be so that I will be loved, liked. This is what I'll get, and this is what I can avoid. If I'm nice and lovable, people will need me, and then they won't leave me. So I'll be needed, and I won't be rejected. That's a great strategy. So we develop personas in order to fit those kinds of orientations. But at some point we go, who am I? I don't even exist. And over time, and we talked about the 12-step program in the previous live. In the 4th step, we start doing an inventory. We start going, wait, here's what I did, and here's what I did, and here's what I did, and I did all those things because I thought it would get me this and keep me from getting that. It's like, wow, that's not working. And we begin to see how we were attached to that persona, attached to that idea, attached to that belief system, attached to that paradigm. And we go, I got to stop that. And when we stop that, we're in this place of what David Hawkins calls, in a sense, that place of faith. And faith he describes as the voluntary suspension of disbelief. No, I forget how he says it, but the truth is we're voluntarily suspending the belief that we should be afraid, and we take this leap of faith. We're willing to risk in that moment because we go, I got nothing. If I looked at all that stuff and began to say, ooh, I was attached to and still attached to this mothering thing, and I was attached to being somebody's wife or partner, and I was attached to being a super duper life coach, and attached to being an author who made millions of dollars, and attached to being a great daughter, and I just pull these things out and keep looking and going, wow, I was attached to all of that, and none of it actually was the fullest expression of me in love and essence and love and delight. It was all very hard work, tracking all those attachments and all the ways I'm supposed to be. It's exhausting. I'm sure you experience that. Exhausting. Marge says, now I'm trying to find me. Yeah. That's a good thing. Some of the things I wrote down here that again, the spiritual piece is in the essence of us as a divinity. God dwells within me as me, that divinity element of who we are that we don't address. And it's very difficult. I found it to be very difficult, and it's only taken 69 years to get to the point. I'll turn 70 in April. If you haven't heard me say that before, I'm turning 70 in April. But it's taken me this long to get to a point where it's like, wow, I'm able to actually see the distinction of our consensus reality and how immersed I am in that, was in that, and how immersed we all are. And we cultivate our spiritual relationship inside this consensus reality. And it's very difficult to do that because we can't be divinity where there is no fear and there's love and light and incredible potential. I'm just on the very slight edge of that truth. I know it, but in terms of my experience of it, I'm just on the edge of that. But everything that I've had to give up my attachments to in order to be here has been extraordinarily excruciatingly difficult, because it means I have to give this up. Not because I have to sacrifice anything. And this is Course in Miracles says this. There's no sacrifice, because what you're wanting is something greater. In Marge not wanting to find her, I'll say this, Marge, this way. I'm now trying to find me. And so everything else is secondary. Nothing is more important than knowing me, finding me and knowing me. And if that's true, there's no sacrifice. There's no sacrifice. It's just, this is the higher priority. This is my highest value. It's my highest trajectory. And that's the truth. And so there's no sacrifice. And in the coaching that I do, I ask 4 questions. You've heard me perhaps say this before. The first question is, what do you want? And I ask it in ways that allows you to really know how important that is to you. That in a sense, it's the as best as you can in the moment, given the beginning of a coaching relationship, that this is where you want to go. It's like being in California and saying that my trajectory is New York. It's like, well, New York as in the mountains, New York as in the city, New York as in the airport. Like, what trajectory specifically? And the more that you can get clear about, here's what I'm really wanting to experience, we get clearer and clearer about that New Yorkness, Manhattan, perhaps, or the Metropolitan Opera Center. It's not the right word, but you know what I'm saying. There's that specific, or I want to go to the Trump Towers, whatever that is, that's so specific, and that's yours to do, then everything else becomes secondary. Everything, and so there's no sacrifice. There is challenge, because it's like, wait a second, that means I gotta do this, or that means I gotta give up that. And there's these places along the way where we have to make choices. And this is the dilemmas, the spiritual dilemmas of our human experiences. Wait a minute, I didn't think I'm gonna have to do this in order to do that. It's like, yeah, that's what shows up. That's why every circumstance in our life is an opportunity to meet ourselves. Every opportunity is an opportunity for Marge to find herself. Like, whoa, where am I in that? As opposed to, where am I because my husband or my children or my work or my dog or whatever. It's like all those things, as opposed to, where am I and who am I in this? And that's the spiritual conundrum, is when we're looking for experiencing the direct experience of me in this. And what that is, that direct experience of me might be frustration, it might be care, it might be love, it might be kindness, it might be grace, it might be despair. Gracie was kind of not sick, but she's getting old, so she's starting to develop arthritis. And last night she was awake till 5 o'clock in the morning. And it's like, okay, who am I in here? Having a dog that's up, which means I'm up. Who am I in here? And I could be pissed off and grumpy, been there, all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's not who I am in this moment. In this moment, I'm basically in a state of what feels like grace or graciousness with my dog, Gracie. And she's okay. She's okay. So who am I in this is in a sense, the question. But we want to go, well, my husband's doing that, or the house is doing this, or the weather's doing that, or COVID is doing this. And we're looking at all this stuff out here, and good spiritual practice is saying, stop. Who am I in this right now? And it might be anger. And we say, no, God's not angry. God punishes anger. Is that really true? The truth is anger is an expression of energy. Love is an expression of energy. Creation is an expression. There's violent star storms out there. Pretty amazing. Is that bad? We make things bad or good. Again, those are judgments. It's part of our consensus reality to judge and be afraid. But that's part of that. Why am I judging? What is it that I get from judging? What do I get from doing that? What does Marge get by tolerating stuff? Like, what does she get out of that? Most likely safety, security, and stability, but not fulfillment. And so we're always at this edge of fear versus no fear. And for me, the spiritual practice is and I was saying that there's two definitions that I have about spirituality. And one is that the leap of faith is where I grow my spirituality. This is where I am an expression of my spirituality, when I take that leap of faith from what I used to do, or was trained to do, or trained myself to do. And those doing might be emotions or thoughts and beliefs. Those are doing things, and going, wait, none of that stuff grows me. Like what Marge is saying, that where she is now in her ability to see herself, how she's been herself, how she's been doing Marge, it's like none of that grows her capacity to experience the fullest expression of herself. When we're in fear will drive us to more fear. Fear will drive us to be more fearful. Fear will drive us to create more fearful ideas, because that's what fear does. But if we go, wait, that is not going to get me to Staten Island, or whatever that is that I want to go to, it's not going to get there. I'm not going to get there doing that. And being clear and putting a stake in the ground and going, I know that this stuff, this despair, or this pattern of dread, which is part of what I grew up with, an environment of dread, this isn't working for me, because this is not going to give me that sense of connection with and align myself with who I am in the spiritual self, with that essence of truth, that essence of divinity. We know that when we're in moments of flow, when we're not in fear, we're not in thinking, we're not in problem solving, we're just in the flow, which takes place in the here and now. In that flow place, that's when we know ourselves, and we know our spirit essence expression of self. Marge says, I want to change my fear to curiosity. Excellent. How are you going to do that? What will curiosity give you that fear's not giving you? We have to ask questions like that to keep ourselves clear of what we're doing. But I think I like what you're saying, and it helps me too to go, okay, that fear thing, it's not working. That attachment thing, the thing I have attached to what it should be like with my daughter, and it's like, yeah, no, that's not working. So there's got to be another way. In the Course in Miracles, one of the prayers is, show me a different way to see this. And I'll tell you, I mean, this is that spiritual, the relationship building with the other side, the non-visible people, that when I ask those questions and I ask for support, I get response. I see it. I hear it. It comes to me, and I have the answers. In Paul Selig's work, the guides say, you'll know what you need to know when you need to know it, and you'll know it then, and not a moment before. And it's that letting go of, I should know it. I'm supposed to know it. Can't I know it because I would be happier knowing it now? Will I make $1 million before I die? It's like, yeah, you don't need to know that. Yeah, but if I knew that, I would feel better. It's like, well, just imagine yourself making $1 million next week and live in that. Why not? Abraham Hicks talk about that we live in a universe and universes. Now they're saying multi-universe, everyone, not just Abraham Hicks, but we live in multi-universes, multiverses. But in our universe, we're living in a universe of attraction. And what we do is we in this human consensus reality live in a world of assertion. This is what I believe. This is what the truth is. This is how we should do it. This is how they should do it. And all of that assertion creates a sense of angst and righteousness and judgment and opinioning, none of which comes from a place of delight and love and expansion and abundance of joy and creativity and love. And law of attraction stuff with Abraham Hicks is all about let go of that stuff are your assertions. Ho'oponopono talks about it in terms of that database, and other people, that database of stuff and history that says this is how it should be, and move yourself out of that, because that's just a consensus reality. It's not the truth of a spiritually founded reality. So we're in a both and situation. We are physical beings. We are having emotions and mentalities, mental stuff. We are having issues and circumstances of financial health, relationship, whatever those are. And who are we in that? Immersed in the insanity of it is our job. In a sense, we're here on earth because we've created a curriculum for ourselves of learning. This is another thing I think, and some people say we're all here. This is Earth University, and we've all signed up to learn certain things, and everything we're in is, in a sense, an apprenticeship. We learn something about ourselves in every circumstance, and we also, when we're learning those things, we eliminate the karma and the density of stuff that we've been carrying for lifetimes or parallel universes, and we let that go, and we come to new awarenesses. And that's, I'll tell you, it's phenomenal. And I'm not telling you that from the spiritual la 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 land, but it's like, it's pretty phenomenal what occurs when you can drop the stuff that no longer matters. When you go, my attachments to that isn't letting me move forward. I'm holding on to 25 pounds of density, and if I let that go, I'm gonna kind of probably be happier, I can imagine. But I don't want to let it go because it means something. It's like, okay, well, you can live in the meaning of that if you want to. It's just a choice. But live with commitment and dedication with, I'm going to stick with the meaning of this, because then your life is fulfilling in that, rather than, I should let go of it. I should let go of it. March says, I can ask myself why fear this? What are my beliefs driving? What are my beliefs that are driving it? Yeah. Why fear this? Fear is just an idea. Everything is just an idea. And most of our ideas of life, our imaginings of the future, our imaginings of the past, our imaginings of COVID or the politics of whatever, are just ideas, conjectures. There's nothing real about it. And I was thinking about this last night, like how many, if you for one day count every thought you have that is not related to truth, as in the big T truth, that would be an amazing practice. Like how many thoughts or ideas are conjectures or imaginings about the future or about the past that is not related to the truth of right now? How many are fear-based? How many are negative-based? This would be a really great way of doing, in a sense, of meditation, because it's like, okay, I'm going to notice every time I think a negative thought. And you start watching your thoughts, and you go, stop. Alexa is talking based on something I said.
You can find that on your calendar.
Alexa, stop. So when we begin to see all of the thoughts that we have that are unrelated to anything that's true in this moment, or is related to that spirit, the desire and the devotion and the dedication to our spiritual path, then we become more clear about, wow, how much of my life I'm spending, in a sense, wasting my energy thinking about stuff that doesn't really matter. Hang on a second. Alexa, stop. So yeah, when we can stop ourselves from when we are noticing those negative thoughts, or the blaming, or it's because of my husband, or it's because of my financial situation, or it's because of COVID, or whatever it is that we're blaming or making responsible, and we go, stop. All of those thoughts are coming from here or here. And you go, I get it. Hopefully you'll get it. Or you might go, no, that's not true. I had a client who would argue with me constantly for her right to be in a state of lack. There's a saying, something like, argue for your limitations and you'll surely get them. So most of us argue for our limitations. And we do that even when we're on our spiritual path, because we're still attempting to create a spiritual relationship with the divine and the divinity within, based on the consensus reality of what we live in. The book Oneness by Rasha, it's a transcribed, Rasha channeled Oneness, and she says, it says, we are here, each and every single one of us, we are here to completely reject consensus view of reality. And when I first read that, I go, that's impossible. How can you do that? Because everything makes sense. Everything is real. And then as I began to really listen to that, and from a perspective of the oneness that I am, and the fuller potential of the paradigm of that spiritual world, that spiritual relationship, the consensus reality, you start to see how much of it is fear-based and blaming, and it's somebody else's fault, and our righteousness. And it's pretty interesting that way. When people will argue, in a sense, like, no, you can't give up consensus reality. And I was thinking about this today, is that, and that we live in this reality, this four-dimensional world or whatever, and that's what's true. And you can't just switch paradigms. You can't just go, talk about a paradigm shift. You can't just do that. And I was thinking about it, that this is my little magic wand. And quite often with my clients or new people that I'm going to work with, I will say to them, I am your fairy godmother. And as soon as I say I am your fairy godmother, they shift. There's something they're now attending. They're now like aware. They're now connected, as opposed to, yeah, I really want in my husband and my brother or my aunt or my money or my health, all that kind of stuff. And I go, well, I'm your fairy godmother. This is my magic wand. And they're all of a sudden, they are attuned. They are now in a different reality. They made a shift. And I go, you can have, my job as your fairy godmother is to empower you to create what you want. What is that? And in that state, They are in the expression of love, their expression of divine, their expression of magic and wonder. And they tell the truth of what they really want. Like, for instance, when March says, I want to know me. I'm now trying to find me. And if I pulled out my magic wand and said that to March, she would give me a different answer. Like, this is who I am when I'm me. This is what I want. And that in the point of my saying that is, that's a moment of a paradigm shift when people move into that place of magical wonder. And so when I'm engaged with them in that reality, because that's who they are, and they are in that essence self, that's who I'm having a conversation with. And I do this with every single one of my clients. And that's what makes it so fun. Not that we're mad, fairy godmother, but that relationship with who they are is not, this is who I'm having that conversation with. I'm having the conversation with you that knows this place, that you know this place. And so many times people will say, I know that place, but I'm really afraid to, and then they fill in the blank. And that takes them back into here, into this consensus view of reality, fear-based. I'm afraid that it's like, and that's where we all start. It's like, yeah, I totally get it. I've been there most of my life, and I'm still in there. And so we begin to notice, oh, I see how I want this, and this is who I really am, and this is who I am in my fullest expression. And I'm delighted in that. I was talking to somebody who said that, and it's like, this is when I am most myself, and I love myself here. It's like, yeah, that's what we want. Not just once in a while, but all the time. Yeah, but you can't, and my mother and my aunt or my whatever it is. And we go, yeah. And that creates that dilemma. Do you stay here, or do you want to move in towards this as a possibility, as a practice? So one more thing I will change, I will ask. One more thing I want to mention. Let me get a little super. One more thing I want to talk about is that the mystics, and Jesus was a mystic, so many mystics. Jesus was one of them. Buddha, all the biggies, but there's lots of mystics. They had the direct experience of the divinity of all of us. They had the experience, the direct experience of this mystical place. It's not it's metaphysical. And again, I was saying that metaphysical activities like numerology, astrology, tarot cards, crystals, all of those things are metaphysical tools that we can utilize to grow and expand ourselves beyond our physical, mental reality. It helps us expand, but it doesn't necessarily address that divinity element of spirituality, but it's on our way. But the mystics had the direct experience, and they come back and say, hey, this is what that looks like. That's what it feels like. This is what we're capable of. This is what we're born to know. This is our birthright, to know and be in this state of rapture within this human experience. And then there are people who have had near-death experiences, people who have had spiritually transformative experiences, whether it was near-death or numinous or out-of-body. There's 1,400 different ways that you could have a spiritually transformative experience. And those experiencers will tell you too that they've had these experiences that are beyond not just the physical, what's that word, the mundane, versus that spiritual place of the divinity of all that is. I've heard this many, many times. I'm participating in an organization called ASSIST, the American Center for the Integration of Spiritually Transformative Experiences. So I'm a coach there where people can call me and say, hey, I'm in the midst of a spiritual immersion process, or I've had a spiritually transformative experiences, and I need help integrating it. So those people have had these experiences of the numinous, of the divine, and it's challenging, but they've had the reality of it. And so many more people have had these experiences. You may have had them in your dreams or visions. So many people have those visions and dreams or moments where they've been in connection with the divine. And it's an extraordinary experience for every single one of us who have had those experiences. And we know that. And they know that. And then they go, yes, but. And they come back and drop back into this consensus reality. So we have this mundane world. And then we have this knowing, the big K knowing of what we are and who we are beyond the consensus reality. And so this, for me, this path that we're talking about, spiritual path, is really about remembering, and not only remembering or discovering, but then how do we be that in our life? As opposed to saying, yeah, no, I have to be what my husband wants me to be. I have to be what my children want me to be. I have to be what my dog needs me to be. I need, my fish tank just went on. It's like, I have to be what that needs. I have to be what my bank account needs. It's like, no, that's circumstances. And how do I be with those? You know, and Jesus said, be in the world, but not of it. Like, we're in these circumstances, but that doesn't mean I'm immersed in my aquarium. I'm not in my aquarium, right? But I have to attend to it. And so those are the kinds of challenges that we face as human spiritual beings. And my whole vision statement is, you know, that my vision is of the fulfillment of the human spirit. The fulfillment of the human spirit. That's what I want for you. Where there's that both and of the exquisiteness of knowing yourself in this and through this physical process, and also knowing yourself as the divine, as we all are. So I think that's pretty much it. Thanks for being here again. I didn't mention earlier, but I have a boot camp. If you don't know about this already, I have a boot camp, and the link is below. It's called Inward Bound Boot Camp for Self-Transformation. And it's a 20 videos, about 10 minutes for each video. And it really supports and empowers you to be present in these kinds of questionings and these kinds of dilemmas, so that you can look at and question and be with yourself. I use the caterpillar and the cocoon and the butterfly metaphor for that process. And so the link is below. So take a look if you want to. I think it's really valuable and helpful. All right, next week we're going to talk more about this. I think it's called Spirituality. What's the point? So we'll see what shows up. All right, any questions or comments, please leave them below. I would be very happy to answer any questions or hear what you have to say about this. All right, blessings to you. Bye for now.